If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
IQ the Iron Man, IQ the Chameleon, IQ the God. What a game from Emmanuel Quickly. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original. This is EJ Stewart, Tommy Beer, coming at you here with another episode. We got to talk about this Knicks win over the Houston Rockets, snapping a 3-game losing streak. We'll talk about this masterclass performance from Emmanuel Quickly, how the team was able to get back on track, and where things look coming ahead to these very two important games coming up. So we'll talk about the win that happened on Monday. We'll also be talking about some fallout from Julius Randle's kind of blow up from last week. He spoke about it before this game and over the weekend. One former Knicks great head coach spoke about Julius Randle and questioned whether or not his temperament was going to help the Knicks in the postseason. So we'll break that down as well. And we'll preview this big game we have on Wednesday, the Heat and Knicks playing a crucial matchup. Knicks right now 2.5 games ahead of Miami in the standings. The Heat, of course, looking to avoid the play-in tournament there in that 7th seed right now. Knicks, if they win this one, will have the tiebreaker over Miami. So we'll talk about that game as well. So plenty to get to on this episode of Orange and Blue Bloods. Tommy Beer with me as always. Tommy, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Knicks needed a get-right game and got a get-right opponent. Snap a 3-game losing streak, much needed, with a master class from IQ, which we'll get into. And then we preview the most important regular season game the Knicks have played in, I don't know how long, but it's been a while. So this should be fun. Let's get into it.
So again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast you can find wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature so you can get these episodes every week we drop. We drop normally 3 times a week. This week we'll actually be doing 2 times this week, but make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you can get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can find our episodes, full episodes and segments on both the Audacy Sports channel and the WFAN YouTube channel as well. So Audacy Sports, WFAN, where you'll find us on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast to get the audio version of this episode. So Knicks got back into the win column after dominating the Houston Rockets at Madison Square Garden Monday. Knicks won 137-115 and were led by an absolute dazzling performance from Emmanuel Quickly. He started in place of Jalen Brunson, who was out again with the hand injury. IQ posted a career-high 40 points on 14 for 18 shooting. He had 9 assists in this one, so an all-around dominant performance from Emmanuel Quickly. Knicks also got a bounce back performance from Julius Randle, who had 26 points in this game. RJ Barrett added 19 points on this game, shooting 6 for 12. Knicks only led by 5 at half, and the defense struggled in the first half to contain the Houston Rockets, but they tightened up their defense in the second half, outscoring Houston 71-54 in the second half. The Knicks really extended this lead. That second unit got out there and really started doing damage. They got the lead up to 33 points at one point in the second half. So a big second half for the Knicks allows them to make this one a laugher. Kevin Porter led the Rockets with 26. Jalen Green had 19. Tommy, when it comes to Emmanuel Quickly and this game we saw from him, I mean, I would say that at this point, they're not really surprising. I mean, when he goes out there, you expect him to have a big impact. And with the growth you've seen from him this season, is it fair to say that he might be the Knicks' 3rd best player at this point?
Yeah, I mean, and for certain stretches, you could argue he's been their 2nd best player, their 1st best player on many a night. But to say the least, he's been their 3rd best player, and it's probably closer than a lot of people think. And the fact that he hasn't cracked that top 2 is just a testament to how well Randle and Brunson have played, essentially at an all NBA level. But I mean, you cannot say enough about IQ. We know about the 6th man of the year, how he's basically gone from an afterthought long shot, at the All-Star break to now the odds-on favorite.
I'm kicking myself not finding a spot in Jersey to get that Wi-Fi and just log that bet for IQ, because that would have been a whole lot of bread.
So true. I hope people that were listening, locked in that had access here in New York. You can't bet on these on those type of odds for some reason. I don't, that has never been fully explained to me. But nevertheless, we know about the production off the bench now with Brogdon dinged up the last couple weeks, and IQ taking his game to another level. That seems like a lock. But also when Brunson's been out, IQ has stepped into the starting lineup and stepped in. Last night was the 17th game he started the season. So not 4 games, not 8 games. This is 17 games. It's a decent sample size. In those 17 contests, IQ was averaging 21.1 points, 5.2 rebounds, 5 assists versus just 1 turnover, 2.8 made three-pointers while posting a true shooting percentage of just shy of 60%, 59.8%. That's really good. To put that in context, there are only 5 players that have matched or exceeded those numbers in those categories in games they've started the season, minimum 15 starts. Those 5 players: Luka Doncic, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry. Again, that's points, assists, rebounds, threes, and a shooting percentage of above 59%. A lot of the talk when the Knicks were pursuing Jalen Brunson was, we like, Brunson's a great player. He showed that he can be a really, really good player, but a lot of Knicks fans wanted IQ to get an opportunity to start. And for these reasons, he's shown that in the games he started. Now, fortunately for New York, Leon Rose brought Jalen Brunson into town, and having the combo of them is obviously better than having just one of them, certainly with as well as Brunson's played and what turns out to be a value contract. It's descending in contract structure, all that good stuff. And speaking of contracts, IQ playing so well is going to put the Knicks in a tough position this summer, because his agent's going to come to the table and play that Fat Joe. Yesterday's price is not today's price. He's going to be asking for a lengthy, a lucrative extension, and we'll see if the Knicks how high the Knicks are willing to go. If IQ and his representatives are willing to meet him somewhere in the middle, because he could easily say, "Listen, I want to push this thing to restricted free agency. I think somebody will take a swing, offer up a big price tag." But those are conversations for another day. Just as far as Monday night's game goes, and to directly answer your question, there's been a lot of storylines, a lot of stuff we've talked about this year. Obviously, Brunson, one of the best free agent signings in franchise history. Randle, from All-NBA to a terrible season, back to All-NBA production, with some hiccups in between. Grimes emerging as a reliable starter. The Hartenstein free agent acquisition really paying huge dividends. The Josh Hart acquisition at the trade deadline that took the Knicks from good to very, very good, and kind of vaulted them up to a higher tier. All those things considered in terms of how it impacts the Knicks' success this season and how it will impact the Knicks' success 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road. The ascension, the emergence of Immanuel Quickley this season into the player that he's become before our very eyes is incredibly significant and arguably as important as all those other pieces, because he more than likely will be at Knick for a long time. And this is kind of his coming of age season, and it's been a joy to watch.
It's been an absolute joy to watch, and because Tommy called for it, I felt like I gotta hit it.
Yesterday's price is not today's price. Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yeah, that man Quickly extension. Ooh, the money is gonna come to him is gonna be big. It may require the Knicks to make some tough decisions elsewhere, but no, there is a fact that Immanuel Quickley has to remain on this team. He has to be a part of this future. And, look, I'm not going to say every point and every take on this show that we make is going to be right, but I am proud of the fact that when Immanuel was not playing as good as he is right now, that me and you both sat on this podcast and said, this is a man that you cannot trade. This is a guy that you have to keep in the fold. And now Immanuel Quickley really showing the dividends for the Knicks, that they did keep that trust in them and did not trade him for a future first-round pick. I mean, that would have been a disaster if they would have did something like that. So you get this performance from him. I do feel like he really is growing into the third best player. Sometimes, like, what I need people to understand is, like, when we had this conversation as third best player, fourth best player, like, sometimes you say, okay, but man, Quickly's third best player, that means, that means RJ is not that good. It's like, well, not necessarily. I mean, it could just be you got a good team, like RJ Barrett had a good game yesterday. He's been playing better of late, but what Immanuel Quickley brings on both sides of the floor every single night. And what Tibbs kind of talked about in the post game, I was trying to find the sound, I couldn't find it, but he kind of said what I said after the Boston game, which is like, again, this guy is a chameleon. I mean, he can be anything you need him to be. So he can come off the bench. He can snipe as a spot up shooter. You need him to come off the bench and find his offense as a primary ball handler. He can do that. He can start and be a primary ball handler and get guys involved. He can start and look for his own shot. He can start and play off the ball next to another point guard. So as Tim said last night, he's a plug and play type of guy. And the fact that you have that kind of guy in your roster that you can just plug in for your all-star caliber, all NBA point guard, and you lose no production. Like the Knicks lost no production from what they would have gotten from Jalen Brunson in a game like that. I mean, it was funny looking at Brunson on the sidelines. He was like kind of laughing, just like, man, like I wish I could have got out there and got some of these buckets. This looked a lot of fun, a lot easier than maybe some of these other games I've dealt with. And one thing I will say about the Brunson effect that I don't think I've heard a lot of people talk about is I think, because we know the Knicks practice hard, I think practicing against Brunson every single day has made Emmanuel Quickley a lot better. Because the guys, he's been practicing with, playing with, studying film with before, haven't been guys that are, upper echelon guys. We know Derrick Rose is a great vet, and I'm sure, Derrick Rose can teach him a lot, but he hasn't played with an upper echelon guard since he's been with the New York Knicks. Now you're playing with Jalen Brunson. Now you're in practice with Jalen Brunson. So you're seeing what Jalen Brunson is able to do on the court, how he's able to get to his spots, how he's able to manipulate a defense. And you start to pick up on the thing. You start to say, hey, I can do that. Or how I add that, how do I add this to my game? Or just guarding a guy like that and knowing how challenging he is. Then when you go up against a lot of these other guards in the NBA, maybe it's not as hard guarding those guys if you're prepared. And Quick talks about how much he watches film on the other teams, and he's really become a film nerd when it comes to that aspect of the game. I think that being around such a great player like Brunson in the backcourt, but also such a great pro has really helped Emmanuel Quickley a lot. I think that's a point about his game that hasn't been talked about enough. I know he talked a lot about Johnny Bryant. Surprise, surprise. Johnny Bryant helping another Knick through this season. We've heard that a bunch. But I do want to shout out Bryant, but I think his time with Brunson, we've seen how much that has impacted his game.
Yeah, a lot of times we joke around about off-season work and, I'm in the best shape of my life and I put on 10 pounds of muscle. We heard all that from Emmanuel Quickley this offseason, and we kind of laughed about it because we joke around about all these guys are always but credit to
they're all coming in in the best shape of their life, all the same stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, and posting workout videos for Instagram. But credit to IQ, he put the work in this offseason, and it showed. We know about the extra muscle that he added that's helped him become a better finisher. Not only does he have the floater, he has that quick little turnaround when he gets that 1 foot in the paint, and that mid-range jumper has been a real revelation in his game this season. Continually adding points. Getting to the free throw line, adding points that way. Become incredibly efficient. Scored 40 points on 18 field goal attempts yesterday. 9 assists, 1 turnover. Again, he talked about, as we've talked about, the start of the game, I want to get everybody involved, but he also realized the Knicks needed to snap out of things. So there's that goes into it. The other component, and we'll talk about in a second, was playing the Rockets, who look like an AAU team out there that just have no cohesion on look at just hunting highlights offensively, really no idea how to defend. And the Knicks did not look good in the first half, letting that team on the back end of a back-to-back hang around. They were only up 5 points at halftime, and they would have been losing had it not been Emmanuel Quickley essentially pitching a perfect game over the first 2 quarters. And then everyone kind of caught fire. It was good to see Obi snap out of a nasty slump in the fourth quarter. He scored 15 points in the final frame. They finally got Grimes involved in the action in the second half. He hits 4 3-pointers, career high 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Again, we'll say it again. We'll continue to say it. Get Grimes involved in the offense. Good things happen. They finally started to do that a little bit more. But yeah, certainly the takeaway has been the improved play of Emmanuel Quickley, and arguably his best game as a pro. Obviously the Boston game was kind of his announcement to the national stage. But this game certainly speaks a lot about just what he's capable of doing. And remember, kid's just 23 years old.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like we have to mention it. This is a guy that was coming off the bench behind Alex Burks, a 30-year-old shooting guard. IQ doesn't have that many reps with the starting lineup and at high level. He didn't get those reps, as many reps as you would have liked last season. But we've seen when he's put in position and given an opportunity to succeed, this kid continues again and again and again to do just that. And just his consistency on both ends of the floor he's been the metronome of the Knicks season. Randle, you get these swings, these emotional outbursts up and down. He didn't look great yesterday, and he finally addressed the media. We'll talk about that in a minute. Obviously, Brunson's kind of been in and out of the lineup the last few weeks. He plays so hard every night. He's going to get dinged up. And obviously, when he's on the floor, he's been fantastic. But IQ, night in, night out, his shooting kind of, he'll go through a little hot streak, then a little slow streak. He's not an elite perimeter shooter yet in terms of percentages, but it seems like when you need shots, he makes them. And then again, even when his shots aren't falling, kind of the quarterback of the defense on the perimeter just gives you so much on both ends of the floor. Just his there's something to be said for him just showing up every day, bringing that right attitude. He plays with a joy that's infectious. You see him skipping around the court. It's just really hard to overstate how important he is to the Knicks.
And you talk about him being so even keeled. I mean, to me, I even think about that incident with Randle last week where, Randle's a big 6'9", 250-pound sledgehammer, and he's yelling down, bearing down on you. A lot of guys would kind of step away and shy away and, maybe kind of, get a little, tail between their legs. IQ stood right in there and said, all right, what are we going to do? And then they just went right back into the locker room. And then I kind of was wondering how that second half would go, and he was great in that second half. I mean, he's unflappable. It doesn't matter what you ask him to do. It doesn't matter what situation he's in. You're always going to get the same manual quickly. Shots may fall, shots may not fall, but you're always going to get the same effort. And what I will say about the hot and cold streaks with him is that you see that the cold streaks are a lot less, or they're not as long. There used to be times where it seemed like quickly couldn't make a shot for 3 weeks, and those may be a game or two, and then he gets back to playing at a more steady
and a lot of that has to do with in years past that would be the case, but this year it's been the slumps are shortened because he does a better job getting in the paint, getting the free throw line, as opposed to relying strictly on those perimeter shots.
Yeah, I mean, that game Monday night, I mean, Kevin Porter was in hell trying to guard him, and the Rockets have a lot of issues regarding what they're doing with their backcourt. I don't know how you can play a backcourt with Kevin Porter and Jalen Green at this point. Both guys are talented, but neither is a point guard. Neither guy can defend. So I'm watching this game, and Emmanuel quickly is just cutting these guys up, and I'm like, you don't have a guy to run out there and just pick them up 94 feet and try to slow things out. They had no chance. So a lot of problems.
One other thing I was thinking about last night was watching that Rockets team was just knowing. Be careful what you wish for sometimes, because I understand a lot of Knick fans were hoping for a complete teardown and rebuild. Yeah. There is something to be said for getting a guy like Brunson, keeping a guy like Randle, and this way you're at worst you'll be competitive most nights, and then if things go right and Emmanuel quickly takes a huge step forward and Grimes emerges as a solid starter, you can you're 11 games above 500, and then all of a sudden you can be excited about the playoffs. Whereas the Rockets, yes, they are at the start of a rebuild, and they have a lot of picks, and maybe they get Wembanyama and everything turns around. But this is a hard team to root for. There's just not, Jabari Smith has had moments, looks pretty good. It looks like he'll be a good player. But there's the way they compete on a night in, night out basis has been rough. On the flip side of the coin, you got the Magic, who we saw them play Thursday. That's a team you'd love to root for over the next 5 years, buy stock in them, that type of thing. But I just thought it was interesting thinking about the directions of the Knicks franchise could have taken recently. When you rebuild and get all these draft picks, it looks good on paper, but then you got to sit through 6 months of watching, Kevin Porter Jr. and defense, and those type of things can be tough.
Yeah, it's like there's a spectrum, right? There's the OKC Thunder, and the Magic, probably in the middle, and then there's the Rockets. So it's like you can be on any one of these spectrums. You love to be the Thunder. You probably would feel good about being the Magic, but if you're the Rockets, you're like, All right, 3 years from now, let's hope this thing works out because who
or
knows
even
where we are right now.
or the Spurs, like even
Right?
with the,
Yeah.
like that, and that they're like if they don't win this lottery, what's their path towards sustained success? I don't know.
Yeah. Watching this game, do you feel like are you convinced the Knicks are back on track? They had that really rough first half defensively. They did score the ball a lot to do with it, quickly scoring the ball, but they did score the ball at a high rate against this team, which is one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. You saw in the second half. One shout out I think you got to give to is Mitchell Robinson. I thought that he kind of changed just kind of the impact and feel of the game with some of those blocks in the second half where he's just ripping the ball out of guys' hands. I mean, the stuff that you see from NBA Street. I mean, he had a really good defensive second half. He had 3 blocks in total for this game. Do you feel like the Knicks maybe got themselves back on track in that second half, or you feel like it's kind of more of a wait and see for these next upcoming games?
I'm on a wait and see approach. I think this game Wednesday is fascinating on so many levels. Obviously, the importance of it, and we'll get into standing wise and all those stuff. But just in terms of where the Knicks are, one, did the Knicks get Brunson back? If he is not healthy for this Miami game, the most important game of the season, that's a worrisome sign. I think nobody was shocked that he sat out Monday. Just to, again, err on the side of caution, give him a little bit extra rest. But if he sits out Wednesday's game, then there's a little bit of a cause for concern. If it's a sprained wrist, initially it was a hand, now it's a sprained wrist. You see him on the bench with the air cast on. Again, we're not going to speculate. We don't want to read too much into it. Let's see if he's. It said that he'd been cleared fully and practiced fully with the team over the weekend. That's very encouraging news. Let's see where he is at Wednesday night if he's in the starting lineup.
Yeah, Breen said. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard that. That Breen just said he's expected to play.
And Breen, he said during the game that he wanted to play Monday night. Like he wanted to play in that Rockets game, and that the Knicks held him back, which I actually enjoyed hearing that, honestly.
Yes.
Because I feel like with this Knicks team and this tenure under Thibodeau, like they've been more inclined to just throw him back out there. Guys hurt, guys a little tired, and they need JB as healthy and as rested as possible. A game against the Rockets where you got to win the game, you hope that your other guys like Emmanuel quickly, somebody can step up and get that W. So I was happy to see that. He maybe could have played if they needed him to, but also B, that they decided, let's rest on the air. Let's on the side of caution here, and let's get you another game of rest here.
Totally. And the other good thing about the blowout, and Obi played well in the fourth quarter, is Randle only played 27 minutes last night. Again, as much time and extra, minutes and rest you can buy him is much important. Not only just ahead of the Heat game on Wednesday, but also just obviously the 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the playoffs start. So, but the other thing is the first half was not good. It was not a good first half. They're coming off a 3-game losing streak. Emmanuel quickly called this a must-win. He said it was a must-win game after the win on MSG. So they knew they needed to come out and play well. They didn't play well that first half. Defensively, they were atrocious. So I need to see a little bit more. You mentioned, I thought Mitch set the tone. Third quarter, 3 blocks, like in the first 4 or 5 minutes. And I think really kind of, changed the vibe and just kind of changed the tenor of the game. And you know what you're going to get from Hart. 2 steals, 2 blocks again. Hartenstein had another great game, plus 32 in just 25 minutes, 6 assists for him. So those guys are going to contribute. The Randle thing is a little bit worrisome. He didn't seem to have that vim and vigor, that energy. Even when I thought he had
a good first quarter.
His first quarter was good. I think 6 of 9, 11 points. So he's going to come out well. But I'm just talking about his body language. Just didn't seem great. And he's the type of guy, even when he scores, he kind of puts his head down and doesn't really, I don't want to say ignores his teammates, but they almost seem to have to try to get his attention and don't want to be overly exuberant. And it just that kind of dour, it's focused energy. And certainly when it's focused in the right direction, it seems well. But coming off last week, them keeping him away from the media, didn't talk to the media after Thursday, didn't talk Friday, didn't talk Saturday, finally talked to the media pre-game after the shoot around. But it's just until kind of Randle gets back on track, until we see that Brunson's healthy, until RJ kind of plays consistently. He was coming off a bad game Thursday, played pretty well on Monday night. Kind of did what the Knicks needed him to do. Those are kind of things we'll need to see. before I say the Knicks are back on track and kind of full steam ahead. And Wednesday's a great test. This is why you play. This is why you compete for, the first 70 plus games of the season. So you put yourself in position. Whereas if you can knock off the Heat, you can all but secure a top 5 seed.
Knicks win 137-115 against Houston. Give my man RJ Barrett some calls, please. Like, what was the refereeing in this game? Like, it was like Randle kind of like, complaining his way into getting some calls finally. Like, I thought in the first quarter they made a point to like give him calls that he was not getting, and then like RJ was like getting mauled going to the basket, and he had 3 turnovers. I felt like 2 of them were fouls. Like, it was just like, I don't know what was going on with that. So hopefully the referee can kind of balance out. I'm happy Randall started getting some calls. Barrett had 9 free throws. He could have had 15. Like, the Rockets can't guard. Like, so he's getting contact going to the rim, and like they weren't calling any. So I don't know what that was about. But Knicks get the win. But let's focus back on Julius Randle because he's been a hot topic because of his antics over the past few weeks. So before Monday's game, as Tommy mentioned, he did speak to the media for the first time since receiving a technical foul in 3 consecutive games that culminated in the Magic game, in which he got a tech and then had the mini blow up with Emmanuel quickly. When asked about his recent outbursts, Randle acknowledged there's a fine line between passion and stepping over the line, but rejected that it's a reflection that he is unable to be a leader for this team. He said, quote, "I don't think it has to do with that. Name a perfect leader. Name a perfect human being," he said, unquote. Asked about the tense exchange with Emmanuel quickly on the court, Randle said, quote, "What happens within our team happens within our team. So I'm not going to speak on specifics on how we handle things. But at the end of the day, we're a team. We're good. And we're just focused on winning." So he would not elaborate as to whether or not there was an apology to Emmanuel quickly or if there was any kind of discipline or anything that was done. He said that gets kept in-house. So that was Randle talking about, the concerns about his behavior over the past few weeks. What I found interesting was quotes from Jeff Van Gundy, who spoke with the New York Post and said that he is concerned about Julius Randle's temperament as a leader for the Knicks heading into the postseason. Van Gundy said, quote, "When you're in the playoffs, every possession, there's obviously more meaning, more pressure. It's going to be more physical. So you're going to have to take more hits and bumps that are not called. And if you can't handle as a team or as an individual physical play or calls that don't go your way or bad runs in a game, then you're not going to have the mental fortitude to be able to endure and win playoff games and series. You need your best player to play their best when their best is needed. And the only way to do that is if you have mental strength." So very pointed words there from Jeff Van Gundy. Also, what I found interesting in this interview he did with the New York Post, they asked him, is the onus on the coaching staff or Tibbs to kind of figure it out? And he said that the onus is actually on Randle. He said, quote, "As far as what a coach can do, if this problem is to be corrected, it's going to be because Julius Randle wants it to be corrected. It can be punished by a coach or an organization, but it can only be corrected by the player." So I thought very interesting commentary from Jeff Van Gundy. There was a lot of commentary on the Julius Randle stuff that we've been seeing. It seems like fans have been split. There's the faction of fans that feel like what happened was not a big deal and that maybe people are being too hard on Julius given how he's played much of the season and how he's been, for the most part, a good soldier for the rest of the season. Others have talked about how what we've seen from him has been quite concerning. Are you convinced that Julius Randle is back on track given what you heard from him before the game on Monday?
So there's a lot to unpack there. First,
Yeah.
let me maybe I'll go in reverse order. The fan commentary, a very reasonable take to say, listen, it doesn't matter. These guys are temperamental. IQ's a grown man. We've all been on teams before. Some guys are ornery and get angry in the heat of the moment, but then they'll go out for beers afterward or have a barbecue and everything's all good, and that's cool. The one thing when fans try to compare, they're posting clips of Patrick Ewing yelling at teammates or comparing him to Kobe Bryant and Draymond.
Insane.
Please
Insane.
don't put Randle in the same conversation. When he wins a defensive player of the year and a couple rings like Draymond, or if he's ever half the player that Kobe was, and don't ever compare or Julius Randle to Patrick Ewing. That's you show that you're not familiar with Knicks history. There's that. So as far as Van Gundy's comments, Again, we talked about this previously, and it was my contention then, and I believe it again now that that Van Gundy's kind of a mouthpiece for Tibbs. The things Tibbs wants to say publicly, Van Gundy's very happy to voice those concerns. Kind of a roundabout way to let Randle know that this is not acceptable. In ways that Tibbs either doesn't feel comfortable or is calculated that he doesn't that it doesn't make sense. The one issue I had with Van Gundy when he says as far as what a coach can do, if the problems be corrected, it's going to have to be Julius Randle who wants to get it corrected. I don't disagree with that necessarily.
Right.
But that being said, sometimes a player or person has to be incentivized to change their behavior.
Right.
When my son and my daughter argue over, something at dinner, or they tease one another, they're not going to stop until I say, usually until I say, you guys are going to have to go to bed early if you don't cut it out. If left to their own devices, they would, they would push and nudge each other all day long. Sometimes a person has to be, shown that there are consequences to actions. And at some point you'd feel, I think a lot of fans would feel comfortable if you would prefer that if Tibbs took Randle to task, because we've seen what ignoring it does. It didn't work in year one. It hasn't worked in year two. So let's try some different options here. Maybe calling him out of the carpet, maybe taking away his playing time, maybe benching him for a quarter or half, whatever the case might be. So that's kind of all that's there. Again, it's not the biggest deal in the world. But he's talked about the things that contribute to winning. Again, the Knicks have a very small margin for error. They don't have Giannis. They don't have Jokic. They don't have Kevin Durant. They have a collection of very good players that complement each other well, a roster that's structured successfully and correctly. When Randle's playing at all NBA level and Brunson's doing his thing and IQ is coming off the bench and contributing, and now you got Josh Hart and Barrett and chipping pieces, then the Knicks can compete with the best teams in the NBA on most nights. Again, but if they don't, then they have the chance to get blown out, and they're not as competitive again because they don't have that superstar to take over games in the fourth quarter and keep them close. So for those reasons, you want Randle to get as close to on the same page as possible. You don't want him to completely, you don't want him to turn the switch off. And part of the reason he's great, part of the reason he's going to make All NBA is because he's a force to be reckoned with when he puts his head down, and gets angry and sledgehammers people under the basket. You don't want to turn that towards the ref because it's counterproductive. You don't want to turn that on to your teammates or coaching staff because it doesn't usually yield positive results. So again, there's that fine line there. Randle's talked about himself. I don't need him to issue a public apology to IQ, but just do the right thing next time.
Yeah. Well, I will say I think that your point about perhaps JBG speaking through Tibbs, I've been skeptical of it. I'm starting to be more of a believer. Because now it seems like he's fine. JBG seems to find the camera or the microphone when Julius Randle's having issues to speak his mind about it. So that definitely could be the case. I agree. I think what some of the fans are missing when we say, well, what about these other great players and leaders who were not perfect? Michael Jordan has been mentioned. Like the problem that people don't understand is there's a certain level of rope that you get based on what you've accomplished in the league. And one of my favorite quotes about leadership came from Michael Jordan in The Last Dance. When he said, like, you could say I was an a-hole, you could say I was whatever, but the one thing you can never say is that Michael Jordan didn't do something that he's asking you to do. Like, whatever thing I'm going crazy about, whatever, like, I'm doing the same thing. So, like, the problem with Julius when it comes to these outbursts is you see times where he's not giving 100% effort, or you see a player who has had these issues in the past and has not garnered a reputation as a leader, as a champion, as a superstar player, that you don't have the license or the rope to say, okay, I could believe in him that this is the way to be, or I can trust that, okay, maybe he will fly off the handle, but I know in that second half, he's going to come out guns blazing, locked in, ready to go. That's the problem. Like, you earn that trust. And I think what the problem with some of the perception around Julius and this perception that maybe people are being too harsh is they think he's earned something. And last I checked, this is New York City. You earn your reputation, you earn your name in the playoffs, in the postseason. Do you win playoff games? Do you win playoff series? Do you win championships? That's what we care about. I mean, people mentioning, well, he had 57 points a couple weeks ago. That was a loss. Who cares if he had 57 points in a loss? He also one of the worst teams in the league. I don't, and with Jalen Brunson out there, I don't care that you had 57 points. And now if it's hurting the team the next game, you're hurting the team the next game. It doesn't matter. So, and the other thing I can't stand about this commentary with Julie sometimes is it's like, oh, well, you're pushing an agenda or you're a hater. It's like, we got to get out of this thing now where if you're criticizing an athlete, you're pushing an agenda or you're hating. Like, Julius Randle is an important piece to the New York Knicks. Anybody who's rooting for the New York Knicks who is concerned about Julius Randle is because they're concerned about the Knicks. So Julius Randle having these incidents we've seen doesn't do well for them. Like, I've seen Draymond Green get thrown out of games, get suspended and do whatever. But guess what? He's able to bounce back. The team's able to bounce back, and they're able to go out and win championships, win playoff games, win playoff series. They're able to overcome that. And in fact, when they couldn't, he's the one that says it was me being out of control against Cleveland in Game 5 that cost us an NBA championship. And that's the other part of it. Julius has these incidents, and then we can't find him. We got to put an APB out there or put him on a milk cart and say, where is this guy? We don't hear from him for a week. Like, that can't be. You cannot say you're a leader, and then when the stuff gets hot in the kitchen, you're nowhere to be found. So, and I understand that there's frustration, there's anger. You don't want to go out there and say something stupid because you're angry. We get that. You saw RJ do it earlier where he didn't talk to the press after a bad game. He got benched, and that was fine. But the problem with Julius is that it's a pattern. So when you see a pattern happening, it's important for us to address it and say, oh, this is something that's continuing to go on. Like, how can a Knicks be a viable team, a team that now has real expectations, if one of your best players is so unfocused at times where he needs to be laser focused? And that's all we're asking from Julius.
100%. And two things. One, on the fan, hater thing. I'm happy you brought that up too, because in my comments and Twitter mentions people, you don't like Julius. It's clear now that you just don't like. I've never went to dinner with Julius Randle. I don't know if he's a good father. I don't know if he's a good husband. I don't know if he's cool to play pool with. I haven't watched movies with him. I don't know Julius Randle. When he does things that don't help the Knicks, I write about it. When he does things that help the Knicks, I write about it. When he's playing well enough that he should force his way onto the NBA team, the All NBA team, I write about it. When he gets 3 technicals in 3 consecutive games and has blow-ups that impact the emotional fabric of the team, I write about it. It has nothing to do with how I feel about the individual personally. I think, like, in the social media realm, people get too confused about whether you like somebody or you dislike somebody. It has nothing to do with that. So that's that point. And yes, the earning the reputation. We know we have 3 years worth of data now. When he's playing well and focused on the right things and smiling and kind of seemingly in a good mental space, the Knicks win. When things are, they win big. When things aren't, and he's getting technicals and he's angry and he's pouting and he's ignoring the media, the Knicks tend not to do as well. There's not a 1-to-1 correlation, but there's a pretty good direct correlation between the vibes around the team and motion and Randle individually and the success. So all that's wrapped into it. So we can't ignore it when we see it. It has to be acknowledged, as Van Gundy talked about. The pressure's only going to get ramped up. And again, to your point, this is New York. It's awesome that we have an important game on the 73rd, 74th, whatever it is, game of the season, Wednesday night. The Knicks have played well enough, largely due to Randle's incredible production this season. But let's not fool ourselves. That's to get into the playoffs when the games take up added importance, and that's when you develop a reputation. Randle has had 1 taste of the postseason, and it went awfully, and he did not respond well. Let's see how he does in his second taste. Hopefully they get there, as they should. And the other thing was just quickly about kind of earning the thing, and I hate to sound like an old, I'm in my 40s now. The constant complaining after every call, and it's not just by the good players on the team; it's by every player. Spencer Dinwiddie, if you watch Nets games, literally.
I mean, Jabari Smith last night as a rookie, is going after the refs. He got teed up.
19-year-old Jabari Smith. I mean, you see it on the college level. Every call is stunned. I think one of the reasons if I had to vote, I'd vote for Jokic is because he doesn't complain that much on calls. And Luka Doncic. All this stuff trickles down. You mentioned Jabari Smith. The AAU kids see it. The college kids see it. We can talk about it over the summer, but the NBA has to nip this thing in the bud where every player. Listen, it used to be, and I heard NBA radio. I saw and Scalabrini talking about this yesterday morning, was Jordan and Pippen and Phil Jackson can complain at the refs. Everybody else shut up. BJ Armstrong and even Horace Grant, those guys they can't get away with confronting the refs. If you're one of the best players on the team, one of the best players in the sport, you get a little extra rope and you can make a tantrum and then you get back on defense. But that's something for another day. But yeah, to your point, Randle hasn't earned the ability to curse out teammates and go tantrums and ignore media for days at a time.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they don't know if him doing that is going to result in anything good. In fact, it's only resulted in bad things. That's what's so crazy about this conversation is that it'd be different if I said, "Oh, Randle got thrown out of a game. The next game he had 50." I was like, "All right, there's a clear evidence that again, like Draymond Green, you just know that you kind of just have to let that guy loose a little bit. I think Curry even lets him go a little too far, but you just know that that's the only way to get the most out of him is to kind of let him kind of go off.
Or you'll see with coaches sometimes they'll get a technical to
on purpose.
With Randle, it works in the opposite. He doesn't get the tech and then cool down. He just escalates and escalates.
Yeah,
and escalates.
Right. Because he doesn't have control of his emotions in those times. Right. Or where again there are guys or coaches or Draymond Green said himself when he did that thing against Dylan Brooks. He was like, I get technical fouls when I want to get technical fouls. With Randle, you see that there is a clear, something that snaps in his head.
It's not calculated where he thinks he loses.
Yeah, it's he loses it and then he stays focused on it and he can't move on from it. And he can't because then the game will end. And how many times you see him be the last guy to leave the court because he's following the refs into the locker room. So look, Randle, I thought last night better game than we've seen from him. Offensively, I thought he was really good. Didn't do anything rebounding. I didn't think his defense was that great. Nobody's defense was that great in that first half, so I'm not going to necessarily pick on him. This Wednesday game against the Heat will be huge to see kind of where he's at. This is a team that he's had success against this season. Let's see where he's at in this big game. So let's talk about that. So the Knicks will have one of their biggest games of the season, maybe the biggest game of the season, depending on who you ask, when the Heat come to Madison Square Garden to face the home team on Wednesday. New York comes into Tuesday. 2.5 games up ahead of Miami in the standings. The Heat beat the Knicks last Wednesday, 127-120. But Miami followed that up with maybe their worst loss of the season. They lost by 29 points to the Nets at home on Saturday. Had Udonis Haslem looking very down bad on the bench, watching his team get obliterated on a night that was supposed to celebrate him, actually. The Heat faced the Raptors Tuesday night in Toronto, so they'll have a game before they come to Madison Square Garden Wednesday. So you're talking about a back-to-back here. This will be a crucial game for the Knicks to avoid the play-in tournament. The Heat currently tied with the Nets for 6th and 7th. Heat sitting 7th right now because the Nets have that tiebreaker. The Knicks would clinch the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Heat with the win on Wednesday because they have already beaten the Heat twice, 2 out of 3. If they get them 3 out of 4, then they wrap up the head-to-head tiebreaker. So do you feel like the Knicks can get this win? This will put Miami away for good?
I think so, and I think this is the most important game of the season, bar none. You factor in the proximity to the postseason, the bad loss in Miami last week, part of the 3-game losing streak. Can the win against a win is a win, the win against the Rockets, but this would kind of make fans feel more comfortable that the Knicks are back on track, and just kind of send a message to themselves, the team, the rest of the Eastern Conference, their potential first round opponent. And one other thing. I don't know if we paid enough attention to it because I didn't have until this morning. The Cavs have 48 wins. The Sixers have 49. The Cavs are just a game and a half behind the Sixers, and the Sixers have an incredibly tough schedule. I was looking at their schedule this morning. Down the stretch here, they play. They host the Mavs Wednesday in an incredibly interesting game.
Mavs. Talk about that. With
Mavs and a massive,
well, they get it.
crazy situation. But then they won last night. Now they're only a half game back of getting right back in that playoff mix. It looked like they were dead and buried after the NBA does them a favor and rescinds a technical on Luka Doncic. But the Sixers host the Mavs, host the Raptors Friday, Sunday at Milwaukee. Next Tuesday, they host the Celtics. Next Thursday, they host the Miami. Then they close out the season at Atlanta, at Brooklyn. So not a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. Cleveland has a far easier schedule. If the Knicks stay in that 5, what's that?
Yeah, so according to Tankathon, the Cleveland has the second easiest schedule left remaining. The Philly has the second toughest schedule remaining with 7 games left. They're tough. Their quote unquote easiest game is against Toronto.
Exactly, and that's a game that Toronto's playing much better,
right?
And Knicks fans will be rooting for Toronto, or if more just as much rooting for a close game, a triple overtime game. So that
right.
One other thing I just wanted to mention because the alert popped up on my phone in the 1:30. We're recording this. What's today? Tuesday afternoon.
Yes, Tuesday.
In the Tuesday afternoon injury report. Jimmy Butler was just downgraded to questionable with his back. A neck injury. So he still sounds like he's going to play questionable. He has a questionable tag, which I think is basically 50-50 shot or closer to 75%. But it is the front end of a back-to-back. Might he keep him out or play him tonight, and then he might have to sit out. Something to keep an eye on for Knicks fans, Jimmy Butler, because without him, he's the head of the snake over there. We saw how important he is and he's decided to start playing now. It's after the All-Star break. So he figures he'll this is when he decides that the games count. Which may not be the best strategy if the Heat fall into the 7th seed. That all that being said, there's a very interesting scenario playing out between that 4 and 5 seed. If the Knicks stay in the 5 seed, they might actually end up playing the Sixers in the first round. But that's a story and a issue to worry about for another day. I think to directly answer your question, if the Knicks win Wednesday night, that would I don't want to say it would lock up a 5 or 6 seed or prevent at least the Heat from catching the Knicks, which would lock at least the 6 seed.
Right.
I think it would 99% in that area. This would be a huge win.
Yeah, I mean, Knicks only have 6 games left. Heat obviously have I believe 7. So yeah, if you're talking about getting a win here, now you got 5 games left and you're up 3.5 games, we'll see what happens. I mean, they could be up 3 games depending on if they lose Toronto. They could be up 2. But I mean, if you're talking about going up 4, like it's over. Miami's not catching, and you're going to be you're going to at least not be in the play-in.
And as we talked about last time, this would give a win would give the Knicks a 3-1 series lead.
Yes, and now you can't tie them. Right.
And that's huge. So that not only then it's like 5 because the Heat wouldn't just have to catch the Knicks; they'd have to pass them.
Yeah, so this is why this game is so important. And I think that if the Knicks can get this game, I think that you can feel good about Miami not catching you. If Miami can't catch you, then you're not gonna see the play-in tournament, which is the most important thing because 2 losses in a play-in tournament and you're gone. So Knicks don't want to be in that predicament. And also there are some teams in there that Knicks have struggled against this season. We've mentioned the Raptors. They've had some tough games against the Bulls this season. So that's not something they want to have to even deal with. So this is why this game is very important. I think for the Knicks to come out, you mentioned Jimmy Butler's health. I mean, Jimmy Butler's been playing so well of late. The fact that now he may be dinged up, whether he's healthy or not, or rather whether he plays or not, if he plays and he's dinged up, that still is a big loss for the Heat because of just how well he's been playing of late. And for the Knicks, we got to see the defensive effort pick up in this game. Like, I want to see, and I was thinking about this game coming into the show today. Like, I really hope that everyone at Madison Square Garden that's rooting for the Knicks or involved with the Knicks treats this like a playoff game. Like, I think that the Knicks players, they have that same kind of mentality, that same kind of focus, the same kind of tenacity. I think the fans need to show up in a big way in this game. This is the first time I'm calling on Knicks fans going to Madison Square Garden on Wednesday. I think for a lot of the season, Knicks have been good, and the Garden's always a great place to play. But in some ways, like I feel like for a lot of opposing teams, it is not an intimidating place to play because they talked about during the broadcast on Monday night how the Rockets were so excited to play at Madison Square Garden for the first time. A lot of those young players were really excited, and they kind of came in, on their Jesus, probably one of the TikToks and the Instagram lives, walking through the garden, say, "Yo, I'm at Madison Square Garden." That's apparently what Jabari Green was doing before the game. So like Jalen Green, I'm sorry, mixed up their two rookies or two young players, but Jalen Green was doing that before the game. So like that's all well and good, but I think for a game like this against technically a rival, but also a team that chasing you in the standings, I need a playoff like type atmosphere at the Garden. They can't make this an easy place to play. I'm hoping everybody comes with the right importance heading into this game and the right intensity heading into this game, because this game really is that important.
Very true. And the Knicks don't have a lot of players with playoff experience.
Yeah.
Obviously Brunson had his run last year, and some of the Knicks got a taste 2 years ago. But Josh Hart has talked about why these games mean so much, because he's never played a competitive game this late in the season. He's never played in a playoff game yet. So that will kind of familiarize yourself with the intensity and the just kind of what it takes and the things that are asked of you, and just kind of how everything's kind of amplified in these type of games. So the issue with asking for the fans is so many of the real fans are priced out, unfortunately.
I know.
At Garden, that it's difficult to even get into the game. It's insane to try to get in there. But you're right, the fans that are in there, season ticket holders, a little practice for them as well to get their vocal cords ready for the postseason, because this game is again, I think the most important game the Knicks have played this regular season. Certainly they didn't play any really important games last season, so dating back to the 4 seed, the 2020-21 season. But before that, there hasn't been a time where the Knicks have played a game in late March. You get the heat, adds a little bit more intensity to it. Should be fun. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to one as well. I mean, Miami recently, when we talk about they played the Knicks. They have not played a lot. They played the Knicks, and then they played the Nets. That's the only games they've played. Obviously they have this game coming up, which is why they'll have this rest disadvantage heading into this game on Wednesday. But going from that Knicks win to that Brooklyn loss, where they gave up 37 points in the second quarter, 39 points in the third quarter. In the second half, they scored 18 points in the third quarter, 13 in the fourth quarter. He's talking about 31 points in the second half. And that's why I'm really focused on the defense, because we saw in that first game against Miami, or not the first game, but the last game against Miami, where the Knicks, they made the Heat look like this great three-point shooting team, and team that can get up and down and spread you out. And that's not who this Heat team has been this season. They have been a lot more of kind of a rugged, kind of like slow you down and kind of just try to beat you into submission kind of team. They just don't have that kind of offensive firepower. The Nets were able to, with their athletes and their defensive players, were able to kind of just, snuff them out completely in the second half. The Knicks need to come out with that same intensity, whether it's cutting off Jimmy Butler and not making him get a lot of confidence early. I thought that in that last game they were showing a little too much respect for his drive. Like, there were a couple times he just stepped into some jump shots that were practice shots. Like, that can't happen. They got to stay attached to Tyler Hero. Hero's played great, I think, every game against Knicks this season. They have not really guarded him that well. He was the only guy that played well in that game against the Nets a couple of nights ago. The guys stay attached to him. I'm looking for Quentin Grimes, who had a really big game in Miami offensively, to have that same kind of impact defensively, which you can do. There's one thing about the Heat is because they don't have really a threat at the point guard position. These guys playing off the ball, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, he can actually get reps on these guys. Now, you can't guard both of them, so he's going to need help from somebody else. But I'm hoping that Grimes can step up and have another big game this Wednesday, on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, get Grimes involved, man. It's just that we talked about it before. Yeah, it was almost the end of the second quarter before he took his first shot last night.
Yeah, that can't happen.
That's something that shouldn't happen. So that's on IQ, that's on Tibbs, that's on everybody. Randle and Barrett and all those guys, keep him involved, because he's tasked with stopping Jimmy Butler. So make Jimmy Butler work on the other end, even though Butler's going to guard Randle, and a lot of time we've seen that Bam's going to get a shot at Randle too. So but yeah, a big game. Tibbs, in-game adjustments, all that stuff. This has kind of a playoff feel to it. These teams have just saw each other last week. meet. They've seen each other 3 times already this season. You're probably going to know what the other team is going to do X's and O's wise. Knicks need to come out hungry. They didn't fall behind by 10 points in the first half against the Rockets for the first time in 5 games, but that's because the Rockets are terrible. You play the way you did against the Rockets in the first half. That Miami team is up 10 points going to the halftime, and then you have to dig yourself out of a hole. So come out, play well, play with energy, play inspired, and show the Heat, show the rest of the league, show your first round opponent, be it the Cavs or the Sixers, that you mean business, and then you can kind of, and that'll buy you a little bit of leeway, a little bit of rope to rest Randle a little bit more over the final 5 games, to rest Brunson a little bit more, if you can, kind of eliminate the Heat from that top 6.
Knicks Heat Wednesday night at the Garden, playoff implications, all those words is like a happy place for me. Reminds me of my childhood. Reminds me of one of the reasons why I love the NBA, why I love the Knicks, why I love basketball as a whole. So, again, if you're at the game, be loud, be rambunctious, don't be offensive or anything like that, of course. But let's hope we got a really great atmosphere for this game, because it is a big game for the Knicks. That's going to do it, though, for this edition of Orange and Blue Bloods, a Knicks podcast, Audacy WFN original, a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcast, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you get the auto download feature on your streaming service so you can get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can find our videos, not just the segments, but the full episodes on the WFAN page on YouTube, on the Audacy Sports page on YouTube as well. Tommy, let the people know they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter.
You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram. Thank you guys so much again for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.